right, let's call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Showalter,
Present.
Myers,
Here.
Howard,
Here.
Redlin,
Here.
Thompson.
Here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see a full house tonight. We have only signed up for public comment this evening. Mr. Craig Lovelace. I figured we saw each other at the eye doctor just the other day, so I must have been like, oh, he reminded her to come see us.
So we're just our first month into the year. So even though I have February financials completed almost, but this was from the last board meeting. So we will just real quickly going through that. Start off with our revenue numbers. Page is turned right here. For the month of January, gross revenue of about 3.3 million. Contractual adjustments of about 1.4. Difference between what we charge and what the insurance companies actually pay. And gives us total net income with some other adjustments for the month of about 2.1 million. Offset that with total expenses of about 1.9 million. And the biggest piece of that, of course, is the employee-related expenses of over $1 million, and that's 728 in salaries, 283 in benefits, and then, of course, we have the contractual labor of about $107,000. So that's still causing us a bit of a concern. About 1/8 of our total payroll is for temporary.
Yeah.
But all in all, not a bad month. Total expenses 1.9 million, and it gives us an operating revenue of 135,000 first month, and that's against a budget of 74. We're projected for the year, looking at $890,000. So a little bit ahead of budget after just the first month. So that's pretty good. Other below the line. Tax revenue, other things that come in. Total net income for the month, $214,000. So, pretty good month. We're still holding well on our cash. We're about 257 days. I'll go through some ratios here in a minute about how that compares nationally or statewide and then regionally. Average census still in the ER about roughly 5.7 a day. So almost 6 people a day in the ER. And we're seeing on the floor average census about 4 patients, just over 4. So one of the things we look at, or a couple of things we look at, is just tracking what does it cost to generate revenue as salaries as a percentage of our net patient revenue. So we're running right now at about 49%, so of what it takes. The state average is 56%, and that's kind of a benchmark to look at. You don't really want your salaries to go much above that 56% level. So we're doing pretty well to keep them down. But again, remember that contract labor, if we added that back in, that would take that number up. So we've got some concerns there still. We want to make sure we're staying abreast of. We've talked this before, outpatient revenue as a percentage of total revenue, the shifting in from inpatient to outpatient. And we've used the example before. Think of your knee scope that the first one I had, I was in the hospital a week, and the second one I walked out after surgery and was on campus the next day taking finals. So it's a big shift to outpatient. And we're running about 87% of total revenue now is outpatient. So that's a pretty significant change. State average is about 74%, so we're running quite a bit ahead of that. Okay. turnover ratio hasn't changed. Our average per quarter is about 5%. Annually for 23, the last year was 18%. State average was 19%, so we're right in line with the average. Healthcare is traditionally higher than a lot of other industries, but that's still almost 1 in 5 employees every year. I was talking about the days cash on hand a little earlier. This is a little bit trailing, so our numbers are just off. I said 257. This has us at 251, so it's just going to trend a little bit. But average for us is 251. State average is 92, and then the regional average, which is Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, about 8 states total, is 106. So we're staying pretty much double.
Yeah.
With the region.
Very nice.
Then the next one we look at is the gross days in AR, how long it takes us to collect our cash. And from the minute you walk in the door till the actual bill is paid is roughly 44.7 days right now for us. That compares to the state average of 61 days, and that's what the region as well as the state are both 61. So we're actually collecting a little faster than most hospitals. So, and that's really about it on the reports for the month. You know, we've just completed our third year of our, we're starting our third year of our 3-year strategic plan, long-term plan. And so we just completed our off-site and working on those goals to take you through the rest of this year. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if any of you have it.
Do we have any questions?
Okay.
Oh, hi.
Bottom line, hospital's doing well. So
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
thanks for
Yes,
all your
that's good.
support. We don't do it without the community, so. All right.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
Craig.
you for the
Thank
update,
you.
Craig. Thank you. Anybody else signed up for public comment tonight? Okay. Let's move on to the consent agenda then. We have the 3/4/23 commission meeting minutes and the appropriation ordinances 2024-06, 2024-06A, and 2024-P06. And we have any questions, comments, or concerns on those tonight?
I move to approve the consent agenda items A and B.
A motion by Commissioner Redlin,
Second.
second by Commissioner Howard. Any other further discussion? Roll please.
Redlin,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, moving on to presentations and proclamations. We do have, wherever I put my paper, a proclamation this evening celebrating National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. With this, on the week of April 14th through 20th of 2024, whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and emergency medical personnel is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone Sherman County 911 communications, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers, firefighters, and emergency medical personnel by monitoring the activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. And whereas public safety telecommunicators of Sherman County 911 communications have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatments of patients, and whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year, therefore be it resolved that the City Commission of Goodland, Kansas declares the week of April 14th through 20th, 2024 to be National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. Signed this whatever day, 18th day of March 2024, signed by Mayor Aaron Thompson. And I think it's safe to say that any police officer or firefighter or EMS or anybody who works in the city would be the first one to say that, you know, their telecommunicators are one of the most important lines that they have, along with everybody else calling in. So if you guys, I know there's a few out here, if you want to come up and be recognized. Thank you guys very much. Photo op.
No. Yes.
Perfect. Thanks for yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have ordinances and resolutions. Starting with Resolution 1627 is to set a public hearing regarding the waiver for distancing at 1222 Main. Kent?
We received a petition, Zach did, from the owners of the rec room. Allison came in and spoke with both myself and Zach regarding the business. They are here tonight as well, Neil Watson and Allison Griffith, and they may want to describe what they're wanting to set up and why this came, and then we can go back to why the request for the resolution.
Right. Yeah. You want to step up to the podium if you would, please? Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're looking to create a rec room, bring in some pool tables, got shuffleboard, arcade games, maybe skee ball, a couple of rooms for banquets, maybe rent out as someone wants a birthday party or whatever. Just come in and have some fun. We're looking to join with Rocket Fizz Soda and some other alternative type soda places that are going to have some really unique brands of soda for kids and really don't drink alcohol. You know, we'd love to serve some cans of beer. We're just looking to do beer cans. We're not looking to do we're not looking to do anything. We're looking for hours to be probably Wednesday or Thursday until Sunday, probably 4 to 10. So it's not going to be early in the morning for people to come in and get crazy. It's not going to be late at night for people to go home crazy. Sundays might even open at 11 o'clock because rumor has it one or two people like to watch football. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think it's exciting that somebody's wanting to open up a business where there's things to do in the evening. You know, anything like that that comes to town is always exciting. You mentioned the drink sales. You're going to be selling food as well.
We're looking for it to be more of like a pizza, chip, snack, maybe deep fryer type stuff, fries, you know, covered mushrooms or something. Somebody had an idea about that earlier. So,
Off the bat, the plan is pizza that is actually will pretty much purchase already made, and then we'll just be keeping it warm there at the beginning, and then if we go further, we know that, food license, things like that, or different things.
pizza ovens are an option, from what I understand. So.
Yeah. All right. Anybody have any other questions?
Appreciate your entrepreneurial spirit. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
When the application was received by staff, Zach and I, Zach, the building official, and I talked about it, and according to Chapter 3, Section 102, there is a distance limitation. And it's in your packet there. It basically states that no alcohol, liquor, or cereal malt beverage shall be sold or served by a person holding a license or permit from the city whose place of business or other premise are located within 200 feet of any church, school, or library. Well, the proposed location of the business at 1222 Bain is within the distance to the Episcopal Church and also through some congruence to Central Elementary School. So, but does give an option on the second part of that section, the distance location of subsection A shall not apply when the applicant or the applicant petitions for and receives a waiver of a distance limitation from the governing body. The governing body shall grant such a waiver only following public notice and hearing and a finding by the governing body that the proximity of the establishment is not adverse to the public welfare or safety. So what tonight is just a resolution set before you to set the public hearing date on April 15th. Zach, did you have anything else to add to that?
Okay, anybody have any other questions on that? Then I will make a motion to approve Resolution 1627.
Second.
A second by Commissioner Showalter. Any other further discussion? Roll, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Redlin.
Yes.
Showalter.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. All right, thank you, guys.
That's good.
He's like, bye.
Okay, next we have Resolution 1628 to set a public hearing for a petition for de-annexation. Ken?
Zach and I worked on this one as well. We had received a petition for de-annexation. This was by Zeke and Julie Behringer regarding the property out in the Goodland Energy Center that they had acquired. It's basically Goodland Energy Center lots 15, 19, 20, 21, and 22, which is not the entire Energy Center. It's just 5 specific lots within the Energy Center. But as part of the process, there needs to be a hearing. According to the Kansas statutes, basically this is the first part of it. Now, it doesn't mean that there's an agreement, just like the previous resolution. It just sets the public hearing. Doesn't mean yes or no, it just sets the public hearing through the resolution. And this public hearing as well would set it for April 15th, the second meeting in April.
Make a motion to approve Resolution 1628.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Showalter and a second by Commissioner Redlin.
Make a correction on one of the names. Jill Behringer, not Julie Behringer.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay, any other further discussion? I just want to say that I know that the topic of properties out at the Energy Center has come up several times over the last year or so of people raising questions about having it de-annexed or anything. But so I just, as we have a month from now, so we have a hearing to thoroughly discuss if there is any, if we have anything on the city side that has good reason as to why we shouldn't de-annex these properties. I would sure like to hear that information, because we don't maintain or do offer any services out there.
There's no utility. There's no city utilities in that location. No.
That's all I have. So with that, roll please.
Howard.
Yes.
Showalter.
Yes.
Redlin.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to formal actions. We have the renewal of our property and liability insurance. Good evening. Oh, we have several favorite nights over here.
You do. I always think you guys are like, oh, she's back.
I'm on budget night.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the worst night. Okay, this is the second worst night. Thanks for having me again. I kind of want to reflect on the last year. As I stood before you last year, it was sort of a really big increase. This year is rather mundane compared to that.
If you remember, I told you all that most of the property and casualty rates were all gonna go up last year, especially the property. I think I even reflected it back to home and auto insurance and how we thought it would go up. Well, that all went up to more than any of us could ever imagine. Some auto carriers took almost 50% rate increases. Out of all the lines insurance, I can honestly say commercial probably didn't go up as much as personal did, which was very surprising to me. You could ask anybody in my office and they would tell you 2023 was the hardest insurance year any of us have ever sustained. Overall, I feel more optimistic about 2024. As you guys probably reviewed your packet over the weekend, there was not that substantial of an increase. A few things that EMC did increase was the property. It went up 8%. The power plant and linebacker went up 10%. The surprising one is inland marine went up 7%. They feel like they didn't have enough rate on this line for a long time, so they kind of took it all this year. The other lines I didn't mention, umbrella or comp auto, they all went up less than 5%. If you guys remember, last year in April, I dropped off a dividend check of about a little over $38,000. I did set in another KMU meeting in January, and that program was profitable again, so it does look like in the next couple of months I will hopefully be bringing you another dividend check. I did go back just for fun to see how much you guys have gotten. Over the last 5 years, you get about $35,000 a year. So keep your fingers crossed that this program stays profitable.
Yes, sure.
A few things that we did do over the last year that did in fact impact your rate. We added 2 loaders. We did remove a Billy Goat vacuum. We added a 2017 and a 2019 Ford police cruiser, and when we did that, it caused some discussion between Mary and I on the equipment. We really never had that insured on the police vehicles. So she talked with the police department, and we decided that we should increase all those vehicles by 10,000. So all the police units did get increased by 10,000 at the end of last year. We did delete a fire truck, and we added a 2004 Nissan. On the property, all we ever did was we added the fire training site at the end of the year before last, I guess, and we took it off. It was just a couple of little buildings. So if you grab your packet with that Excel sheet that I sent you guys, if you look at the overview sheet, which is this one, kind of the easy sheet in the whole packet, probably the biggest thing to note is your wind and hail deductible.
Yeah.
EMC raised that to 50,000. Actually, they raised it to 75, but when I had the meeting with Kent and Mary, we decided you guys would be good with the 50, and EMC was willing to come down 1 deductible, basically. The power plant, however, is a $75,000 deductible, and that is not something they will come off of. They feel in order to keep this program profitable, they have to raise those power plant deductibles. Literally, EMC is about the only carrier that will still write a power plant. So that's another reason. Let's see what else. If you look on your property section, the only thing that really changed was the value of all the buildings and the personal property. Of course, it went up. You do have a 100% co-insurance limit. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with co-insurance or not, but if you aren't insured to the value of what your co-insurance is, then you will receive a co-insurance penalty should you underinsure your buildings or your property, whichever that may be. It's pretty straightforward. To figure out what your co-insurance penalty would be, should you have one, you take the amount of your building, you had it insured for, say, $1 million, but it was supposed to be insured for $2 million. Say you have a $100,000 loss, you're just going to divide that million by the 2, come up with 50% loss. If you had a $100,000 loss, you're going to get paid half that, so you get the $50,000. Kent and Mary and I go over these every year. The underwriter does replacement, so the only place I could ever feel you could be off, but Kent and Mary go over this again, is the business personal property. So having 100% co-insurance limit does get you a lower rate, but it also holds you guys more accountable. Auto section, if you flipped over there, nothing exciting there. The deductible on the fire trucks is still $3,000. Some of those fire trucks are replacement. The rest of the vehicles are $1,000 deductible. The trailers are just liability. A couple of changes to the inland marine section if you were comparing last year to this year. The street sweeper has been moved back to the auto insurance, which is where it probably should be, but depending on what underwriter we have, it depends on where they want to put it. If you read the form, it really should be insured under the auto insurance. The other thing is, we had a Crimline trailer on there, which I'm not sure why that was there, but it's been there. We moved that to the auto section. It shouldn't have been there in the first place, so we just moved it over there. Nothing on the liability section changed. The deductible's still the same. The limits are still the same. The only other thing I would say on that sheet, if you looked at the cyber liability, you notice the premium went down. That is a new carrier. The limits are the same. The deductible's the same. You still have the concierge service that I always talk about. It's just Hiscox was too expensive, so we quoted it, so now it's cheaper. I also put these, because I don't want to bore you, I want to teach you, I want to tell you guys something good every year, so I'm sorry that I do this, but I did put these slip sheets in there about the extensions you have. On the auto and the GL, if you looked at them, you'll notice they both have an essential and an elite extension. You guys do have the elite extension on both of those. The business property, that extension is just given on every municipality, but it has a couple of things in there I always just kind of point out. Two things I want to point out. Your business income limit's $1 million. Always a good thing to review. If the city would sustain a total loss, let's say a tornado, would that be enough to keep the city going, to find a new building, to make payroll, all those kinds of things? And then the other extension I wanted to mention, which I feel is a great coverage, is the $500,000 in outdoor property. Just to relate it back to how expensive things are, I just sat in a meeting where this dentist office suffered a complete loss. And it was just your regular dentist office. I think it had 2 trees, some lawn, and some bushes. And their coverage was $25,000. It cost them $100,000 to replace that. So with all of our parks and stuff, $500,000 coverage, I think it's great. It's something built into your policy. I do always keep my eyes open for markets. I did look again this year. I did hear of one that was open to quoting stuff. I contacted them a couple of times. They never bothered to contact me back, so I guess they weren't interested. Overall, though, I do feel EMC has stood the test of time, and they are reliable. They have great service. I think Mary can attest to the claim service, that they're easy to work with and usually pretty on top of their game. That's all I had. Do you guys have questions for me? Anything stand out in particular?
Yeah, I mean, the only real question that I had, you already covered, and that was that increase in the deductible
Okay.
from $25,000 up to $50,000 and $75,000, which is a pretty substantial increase in deductible. But if that's all that they are willing to work with, they're not willing to do $25,000 anymore.
So the other thing too, I always tell people, and I would tell this to anybody, when you look at your limit of insurance and it's in the millions like that, I have to think that you need to be able to sustain those smaller losses. And in the insurance world, that's what it's going to come down to. I have a feeling in the next few years, it's going to be bigger deductibles. Even for, I go back to the home and auto situation, I think you're going to see $2,500 to $5,000 deductible on a home become a norm. Because these companies cannot keep up with the cost of what it costs to fix houses, to fix autos. So I think it's going to become a norm.
You included in the packet the violent offense response information. Is that because that's something that's covered now, or?
It always has been.
Okay.
I just thought I'd put it in there for you guys could look at it.
Okay.
Sometimes I think there's a lot in here that you guys don't even know, and I just put it in for information.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
I do appreciate that. You have any other questions?
It's pretty straightforward. A lot of good information there. Appreciate you being so thorough.
Well, appreciate your guys' business and letting me come and talk to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I assume we need to make a motion to approve this upcoming year's premium. And the number we have on here is $481,028. I assume that's still the good number. In that case, I will make a motion to approve the property and liability insurance with a premium in the amount of $481,028.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Howard. Any other further discussion? Roll, please.
Howard.
Yes.
Redland.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Showalter.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to discussion items, starting with a lot out at the industrial park and a proposal for a lease agreement. Kent?
Mayor, members of the commission, the lease agreement is for Lot 3 out at the industrial park. Been talking over the last few weeks with Lisa Rodriguez. Maybe I haven't talked with Raul very much. I haven't had the opportunity to, so. There he is. About this situation, and it gave them a copy of this possible lease, but they did have some questions for, and basically, in order to lease the property, there'll be a couple of different improvements to be made as far as the driveway entrance into the property, which was done on the two lots that were, thank you, Josh. Nutrient up on the top of the screen, as you make the turn, the little blue line starts to make the turn and start head west. Nutrient owns one parcel, the parcel right at the corner, and then they lease the second parcel. As part of their lease agreement, they completed the driveway entrances into the lot that they have there. Talked and gave a number to Lisa to have our guys create the driveway entrance into the lot, and also start be able to work the lot as far as that goes. As they would lease the property, there may be a need for other utilities that would come at the expense of the. And what they wanted to ask was there be a possibility? Well, I should just let them talk instead of me talking. But I'd ask Raul and Lisa to come forward and ask the questions they wanted to ask regarding the lot.
Okay. Good evening.
So our question was, we were actually looking at seeing if we will be allowed to purchase the property. Putting the investment that it's gonna cost us to put the driveway and the electricity. We were asking, can we purchase it? And then look into probably building a shop out there. Try to get away from the situation we're currently dealing with. That's why we came up with this idea, is we saw that you guys had it for sale. So we were just wanting to see if that's a possibility. You know, as much as putting the investment into adding the electricity, the driveway, and things like that.
Okay. What exactly is your business that you'd be putting out there?
We have trucks. We haul liquid fertilizer, corn. Yeah, pretty much silage, you know, but it would get us out of that way. We do have a commercial shop there on 16th and between 16th and 17th, but we have a couple of neighbors that are a little riled up about the trucks and stuff, and we try to keep it as quiet as possible, but you know, it's just traffic of a big vehicle and stuff, and so we've been coming up with ideas, and we saw the property, we called Kent about it and stuff, and so, you know, instead of doing that investment, we're thinking if we're going to do that investment, we can purchase it and then look into building a shop out there.
And what all, so you do trucking and commodities, basically,
Yes.
is what you do. So if you were to build a shop, that would just be to house your equipment? Would there be anything else going on out there?
To park and service the trucks out there, you know, so that we can just keep them all in one section, you know, because the area is small, so we have to take turns bringing trucks in and trucks out, or, you know, I mean, it's just a big old, we're just trying to keep peace in that community and trying to look at other options, you know, and that was a good option. We do work a lot with Nutrien and stuff, and so we're always in and out of there as well, so. But, you know, we're looking at, you want to purchase 2 acres? Yeah, if we could purchase 2 acres there, you know. And that would give us enough room to park all our trailers and our trucks, and then build a different shop out there where they can service out there, and then this other one, we'll just use it as more personal, since it's already there.
So 2 acres would pretty much be the size of one of the squares on there.
Correct.
Right, yeah.
How much is an acre? I mean, how much, how wide is an acre? Square foot is that?
I do not know off the top of my head, but it's,
Basically, this lot here, that lot.
Okay.
so basically, if you've gone out there and looked, when you make the turn and you have that whole area that Nutrien has stuff on, about half of that space, that area, would be 2 acres, because they have about 4 acres that they're using right now.
So they got that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, so, my biggest concern with selling the lot is the idea with the industrial park is to have larger businesses that employ many people, that bring more industry into the community. I don't know, how many employees do you guys currently
3 of us.
employ? Just 3? So for me, I mean, it's not exactly the idea of what we're trying to accomplish with the area out there. You guys are a commercial business and it's very viable, but it's kind of smaller than the idea of the stuff we're trying to build out there. That is one of my concerns I have about selling to you, just, you know, personally. I would have no issue leasing, but then again, you also have your concerns with, you know, the expenses that you would then have to build the things you feel like you need to have on the property, you know, and it's hard to justify to yourself committing that kind of expense to an area that you're just leasing. And I guess that's kind of where my thoughts are. I'm just not sure.
Well, you never know, we're gonna continue growing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, but the idea is, like I said, is just to get it out of the area where we're currently at, to try to get it more based out on a more commercial property, you know, and stuff like that. That's what we're aiming to do. If not, you know, we'll have the option, we have that other lot across the street from us, from our shop, which we could try to make that commercial, but then we're still gonna deal with the ruckus of the extra neighbors. So we're trying to figure out a way here, and so that's why we're
Yeah.
here today.
Is the concern, and I guess we're kind of delving sideways, but is it the noise? Is it,
It's just the trucks going by, you know?
It's-
And I mean, it's not like it's a nonstop. During the weekend, yeah, they're gonna service trucks and things, but if we pull in there, they're calling in. If we move anything, he's calling in. He's constantly just taking pictures of our lot, seeing what we're doing, you know. He's bothering y'all more than he's bothering us, but, so we're trying to figure this out, but, I mean, if not, that's our next option if we can't get it out there.
There's also the concern of the current location on Colorado, where you have the juxtaposition of the residential to the commercial.
yeah.
Would you guys be opposed to going on like 24, Highway 24?
No. I mean, if there's property out there that we could
Yeah.
look into
Right.
purchasing, that would even be easier, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to do. It doesn't necessarily need to be out there, but we just didn't, you know, we don't know if there's other property that could possibly be purchased.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So-
Yeah. I guess I would say set up some time with Kent and have him show you that property and see if that's a suitable location. We do have a property out there, and see if that would be something that you guys would be interested in. I don't know how the other commission feels, but that's an option that I can see.
I wouldn't have problems with either property. In my opinion, it's, especially if you build a building out there, it's more tax revenue for the county and the city. And either way, I think it's growth for Goodland. It's just that the city we need to sit down as a commission and find out what we want for the lots. And we haven't done that yet.
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, I can set up a meeting with Kent and I can make him crazy all day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As long as
so-
somebody is.
Yeah, so, yeah, but we can do that and we can look into that as well.
Yeah, you know, we're getting ready to expand and improve those lots out there, and we're trying to develop a vision for what we want to have out there. You know, I've known you guys for a long time. You work dang hard and you have a good job out there, and, you know, we don't want to turn anybody away. We just want to make sure we've got our strategic vision for what we want out there with the amount of money that we're going to put in. I think the thing that always scares me when we talk about commercial lots is we want to see, building improvements and things like that. We don't want to build a parking lot is kind of the thing that always scares us a little bit. So we look at those lots, that would be the thing that would concern me is why, I don't necessarily have any issues with different kinds of industry going out there. It would just worry me that, we sell to people who just park cars or park trucks there. We want improvements. We want things that are going to generate economic activity for the community. So that's kind of what we're looking at.
That's what we looked at, as when we looked at that property, is we immediately thought, well, we can go with another shop and just leave that one there, and stuff. I mean, we've worked hard to put that shop in our house there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
keep working on it, but it just, sometimes it doesn't seem like you make everybody happy,
Yeah.
which is part of living, and stuff.
Welcome to
but-
the club.
Yeah, so, yeah, but we can set up a meeting with Kent, and we'll look at that other property, and then you guys can decide.
Sure. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Now, if anything else you wish to say on the matter? Okay. Well, let's move on to item B, creating more housing choices. And I believe we have Barb Cole here with us tonight of Community Matters.
One thing I wanted to suggest, Mayor, is did you want to take care of the other reports first and set up the room a little bit differently for this discussion since we have planning commission members?
That would probably work the best, actually, yes.
Okay. Let's,
We'll move ahead to reports, starting with our city manager, Ken.
and then we'll come back to the discussion because that's more of a general discussion. In your packets is the manager memo as well as the police monthly activity report. I do want to ask Street Superintendent Kenton Keith to come forward and give a little bit of information regarding the full fuel tanks at the city shop that we've had a little bit of an issue come up.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Well, I guess a couple weeks ago, we had our annual inspection of our fuel system. And West Dewson found a line that had a leak. Well, the leak test from the pump to the dispenser, there was a, I guess, it wasn't a leak. We didn't think it was a leak at the time. They thought it was maybe an O-ring that just was wore out. So they come back out with an O-ring for us, but the leak detection did not fix it. So, and at the same time, the state inspector was out here at the same time, so he went ahead and he just kind of monitored the situation at that point, and then he called us last week and asked if it had been resolved, and it wasn't yet, and so he shut our diesel tank down. So, which Friday we went ahead and opened up that, opened up our concrete Friday, to get it opened up for them to come see what's leaked. So the line itself, we were kind of nervous at the same time because he gave us some quotes that it could cost upward $1,000 to fix. But luckily it was just the flex line at the pump area, not the down by the submersible pumps. So they got that fixed today. Our pumps are back up and running. The state guy had also mentioned, that there's grants out there. Our tanks are getting a little aged. I mean, they were installed in '87, and they are a Stye P3, which is a steel tank with coating on it. So, I mean, he mentioned it again today. Hey, you got this open. Maybe you think that, well, the grant only covers $100,000, but we got a quote of upwards around $350,000 plus to replace both those tanks. So that's not even an option at the point right now. So, but we will be looking at implementing something in our budget to start building up, because someday we're going to have to replace those tanks. So the state guy was out today to take soil samples to make sure there's not a significant seepage from the diesel. And as of today, he didn't find any conclusion that it seeped enough, but he has to pass everything on to Topeka. So the West Doosan asked today why they had it opened, if we wanted to replace the submersible pump. So that submersible pump's also really expensive that we don't have the money for either. So we did buy a couple new hatches. Right now we had 2x2 squares. Now we have 42-inch squares we'll be putting back in with concrete. And we kind of decided, if we do have issues with the submersible pump, we do have new dispensers, but those dispensers also, we could eliminate those dispensers and get dispensers that have suction dispensers, and just eliminate the submersibles at one point. With us putting bigger manholes in, they wouldn't have to tear up the concrete again to do that. So that's kind of where we're at on it. Things could change down the road on that, but I think we're at a point where it's not going to cost us a whole lot to hit what they did today. It shouldn't cost the city too much. So, but we need to start budgeting down the future for something very fun.
Appreciate the foresight.
Yeah. Thanks for the update, and hopefully it holds on for a while.
Yeah.
Should. I mean, it's old, but you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, just like this line, we get a yearly annual there. We wouldn't have known, because it actually wasn't even showing up in the reports of fuel. We weren't losing much, but that line actually had a leak, a very small leak. And they did get air tested today, and it's holding what they fixed. But the state guy told us we cannot put the concrete in until they come out and do a liquid test on it. So they fill the line up to make sure it holds with liquid in it. So, which West Doosan's guy that does that is gone this week for schooling. So hopefully next week he'll come out and do the liquid test, and then we can pour the concrete. So it'll be setting up for a little while. So.
With that soil sample, let's say it comes back worst case scenario, what does that mean for us?
Oh, you could probably have to have someone come out here to excavate the area.
Okay.
So it costs probably a significant amount.
Sure.
The good thing about our reason, he tried to take some soil samples between the two tanks, but the tanks
the soil between the tanks is basically all sand. And so that's where the leak was. He tried to take samples where the sand just comes out. He has to go so far down. So he wasn't too concerned about that area because there's a liner underneath those two tanks right there. He took a soil sample on the outside, and that dirt he's pulling out, he didn't smell any diesel on it. He did take a soil sample from that, which was fixed. So.
Thank you.
Nope. Thanks, Kenton.
Fuel seems to be the theme because the airport board also discussed fuel storage facility because we have different people asking about that as well. And regarding the tanks, we basically have an agreement right now with our FBO, our fixed-based operator, Butterfly Aviation, regarding that they sell the fuel out there. What they are looking for, and they'll have this in future, in a couple months, is they'll look through some various information and a possible grant application to KDOT Aviation for an above-ground fuel facility, which may be either an addition or as a replacement for the current fuel storage facility. An above-ground one, and they have them on skids, and they have them on, it works out differently for the, it would actually be right off the tarmac on the north side of the tarmac, just beyond, which would work out better for the pilots where the current location is around behind into the infield area basically there. So, but there's some additional information for that, but I just want to let you know that there might be a possibility of a grant application to KDOT Aviation in the future, in a couple, 3 months.
Okay.
Pool area, Danny's putting together a much smaller shade structure than the current one. At the pool area, going through similar vendor, and it'll be similar to the shade structures that are already at the pool. I don't know, Danny, did you want to add anything before I talk too much? Yeah.
Happier note after the fuel
Yeah.
discussion. I've ordered another shade structure for the pool. Pool manager, Barb Bedore, has been requesting last couple of years a shade structure. Had the opportunity to get it this year. It'll shade about half of the concession area and half the pool area, so parents are sitting there south end of the pool watching the kids go into the shallow end and sit under the shade. And the kids eating their snacks there, or have some shade there to have their snacks there. And it'll cut down on some maintenance on us as far as the grass. We've already got it dug up. The sprinkler system is out of it. About 340 square foot is what it is. This shade structure is 14 by 22, so it's about a fifth of the size of the big shade structure. And Barb and I and Kent picked out a royal blue color to try and get some color there to cool. That blue will match the slide and match we've got brand new signage this year for the pool, so it'll kind of offset that, and the benches over there are blue. So the existing shade structures there are what they call sand, desert sand. They're kind of a neutral color. This will kind of get some color going over there.
Give it a little pop.
So anyway, they said about 5 or 6 weeks delivery, but we're going to go ahead and get everything ready so when it hits, we can get it in the ground and get it up before we open the pool. So.
Very nice.
Another item that's getting fixed at the pool is the impellers have arrived, and we should be getting valves this week for a couple of things in the mechanical room. Get that situated for the pool season. So.
Neil's doing his heavy equipment, and I'll get all the plumbing hooked up, and we painted the pool last year, so I'll be ahead of the game this year and start filling the pool. Get ready to go.
Good.
Any questions?
Nope. Thanks, Danny. Thanks.
The one other thing is regarding the base grant. We received such a decent bid as far as the streets, water, and sewer for the base grant. During our discussions, our continuing discussions with the Department of Commerce about what funds can be used as our match for the base grant and trying to get that confirmed. They want all of those. We were awarded 1.8 million, and we're about at 1.1 million, between 1 and 1.1 million with the two contracts, with the contract for the contractor and also the engineering contract. The engineer is going to be contacting the contractor and see if we can get the rest of the part done. As far as what our grant application had was really for only a portion of that industrial park. There's a pretty good possibility that we'll end up being able to do the entire road all the way around to connect with it, and also the rest of the water and sewer. So that would be a good thing, I would think. And if there's an expansion of the current contract, we'll have to come back to you all to approve that, of course, but with the staff recommendation. But Andrew was off, so wasn't able to do it as far as this goes. But in the next meeting or two, we'll have something like that presented to you probably. So that's good news. And we also had met with Eagle Med. They had a request to add an office to their building, and I think we found an alternative solution. Kenton pointed out regarding the next door building that the city had required does have office space in it. It is not currently being used. It's basically being used for the storage space for Butterfly Aviation, for the planes that they work on, and also just general storage. And but they don't use the office area, and I think that will work out for the Eagle Med, and they're going to be checking and confirming that. But I think that we will have to make a little bit of adjustment to their lease agreement, but much simpler and more cost-effective way to meet the need than building an additional building.
I like it.
So that'll be that thing. Also, one last thing, I will like, Police Chief Earhart had received a phone call from Senator Moran. And Chief Earhart, would you like to announce what was said from Chief Moran? Or Senator Moran?
Always be prepared.
Hi.
Evening.
Evening. So Senator Moran called, and we put in for a grant, I think last summer, to replace our portable radios, and we were awarded that grant. It was $61,000 to replace our portable radios. That was good news.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. So he'll be coming out. He's going to take a tour of our facility, and then coming out, and I believe bringing, I'm not sure if he's bringing a check or just coming out to present it or what. That's something here in the near future.
Sounds good.
Yeah, very awesome.
And that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. Do we have any questions, comments for our city manager? All right. Thank you, Kent, for all you do. We'll move on to commissioner reports. We're going to start right here with Commissioner Myers, because she never gets to go first.
Oh, thanks. I just want to thank Kent. With me being with traveling and everything else, I appreciate the weekly reports. Just makes me feel a little bit more updated when I'm actually coming in for so often. So I appreciate that, and thank you.
Agreed. Commissioner Howard.
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Showalter.
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Redland.
I also have nothing to report.
Okay, for the mayor's report, I also have nothing more to add. So with that, we are going to backtrack a little bit back to our continuing discussion with Barb Cole of Community Matters, with follow-up with the ongoing discussions we have been having. So we'll take a little time to rearrange and get ourselves all set up for that.
We want to set a table for the planning commission. Yes, down here. You guys want to sit up? You guys can move to the front.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can do that, but we don't need to drag that back.
Okay, okay.
You can drag that table over. It doesn't look heavy.
Go ahead. I'll just latch on to it.
So we need to set up.
No, you're
Need a
fine.
table? Do you need a table to work off of?
She has a big podium.
I feel like I know all of you because we interviewed all of you.
Yeah.
Right?
And then I had to put everything together. And I was saying to Kent and
Thanks, sir.
Zach drove us around and kept on saying, okay, so is that the guy that has a lot of kids?
Thank you.
So what we're going to do is walk through sort of where we're at, and planning commissioners are also here. So if anyone has any questions, the way I'd like to do this is as we go through this, if you have questions, comments, or whatever, let's take them rather than waiting till the end, because I think then we can have much more of a dialogue. Bob Haywood is also here. He's the one taking the photograph. Bob interviewed some of you.
Good
Bob
evening,
is an
Bob.
economic development specialist. He is also someone that used to run, what was it called, International Parks. So Bob has a lot of background in industrial park development, not only in this country, but he's worked in 174 countries. So they just wrote an article about him where, what did they say, that he created more jobs? It was, yeah, so.
Well, I will clap for that.
Clap for that.
Thank you, Bob.
So we bring him along because sometimes people think that people in government, want too much regulation and too much whatever. Bob keeps us all on the straight and narrow. So,
Keep us in our place, Bob.
yeah, so is there a clicker, or do you have, how do I make this move?
You pointed him.
Okay, Josh, next slide, Josh.
Yep,
Say
that's
next.
it. You say next, Josh.
Okay, so again, this is, both Bob, I used to also be an economic development specialist for the state of Colorado out of the governor's office. So I have that background as well as being a planner. But as we've said before, better regulations will help attract the land uses you want. They're really the first choice economic development tool. And I may have said to a lot of you, and we'll get into it, one of the issues that you're going to have in what you have in sort of analyzing your code, you have a code that has not been exercised. And I mean that seriously. Okay? And you haven't had a lot of development. So again, regulations help preserve property values. They're a set of tools that shape the places you live, work, and play. They preserve valued characteristics of place. And again, from the commissioners, and I love the fact that I can say planning commission and city commission, it makes it much easier. You all have said that ADUs are okay. Numerous people said that you really need housing that is one level for elders. You did say apartment buildings up to 4 stories, and we can add a little bit about that from fire.
because I don't think you can really go 4 stories and be able to adequately address putting things out. Tiny homes are okay, and a lot of people said less yard to take care of. Next. So commissioners generally agreed that you need more housing units are necessary to accommodate economic growth, different types of housing at different prices. Rental housing is obviously needed, and housing is needed quickly. Bob and I met with you, Lisa, this afternoon, and I was surprised that Schooler is moving quite quickly. So they're looking at about 100 employees by the end of the year, is what I was told. And then the tire people are also moving quickly with about 25 new employees before the end of the year, and then a lot more after the beginning of the year. So that was one of the things as we went through this, and again, spending a lot of time, quality time with Zach and Kent today. But again, commissioners generally support ADUs, apartments, and modular manufactured homes. I should add that throughout this, there's this group called Housing Growth Partners, which were hired by Schooler, and it's this guy, Adam Hutnick, and then I guess Matt Darling was actually hired directly by Schooler, but they're working for Schooler to try and figure out how to get housing on the ground quickly. And they are in the modular manufactured home business. But every time, and to Lisa, every time you talk with them, it's sort of a slightly different story. So we'll see what happens. Next slide. So the commissioner's request was to meet with Community Matters in person. You wanted to know a little bit about what is the suggested approach to tackling the code updates. And then the third question is, how much is it going to cost? So those were three simple questions. Next slide. So a little bit about us. Kent, I'm going to pick on you, keeps on saying Community Matters, Inc. Community Matters, Inc. Is still a corporation that I own, but it's sort of in mothballs, because in 2018, we decided that we would become a not-for-profit. So we operate as a not-for-profit with a board. And one of the things, and one of my board members, as we were coming, I guess we were here, and Scott said, well, where are we with coaching from the sidelines? So one of the things that we work with a lot of small towns, and a lot of small towns that don't have a lot of staff. But the idea is, instead of us doing all the work and then leaving you and everybody going, oh, what do we do next? We're starting an initiative called Coaching from the Sidelines, and you're going to be the second community that's going to benefit from that. So that means, and we'll show you an example. Did you pass those out? So everybody has an example. The Planning Commission went through this. So just very quickly, Kent and Zach went through the R1 and R2 zone district to basically say, okay, what needs to be changed? And then I picked it up and started picking it apart. But again, it was a really good learning experience for both sides, and really demonstrates that I think we can work together, sort of divide and conquer, to make the best use of your current resources. And also, I think it will, in particular, help Zach sort of get up to speed, because what's going to happen as growth begins, I'm really worried about what's going to happen with staff. And so I want to make sure that the code is as easy to read and administer as possible, because we don't want Zach spending all of his time explaining to people this, okay, this means this means that. Mike is the other person on our staff, and he probably completed over 70+ code amendments for smaller communities, and also counties, but their communities too. Bob and I both, obviously, I mentioned as our economic development specialists, and we already have a great working relationship with Kent and Zach. And again, you know, what's changed in our lives is since COVID, except here, it's really easy to do everything virtually. And I cannot tell you, having done this for over 4 years, how much money that saves smaller communities. And it's really quite, I mean, it's just a nice thing. And we actually got pulled in. Ken actually used to live there. We got called in as the interim planning director for Idaho Springs. And I had worked there since '83 on and off as a consultant. And from the time we were hired, and we went to Idaho Springs from that, we never went to Idaho Springs again because everything was virtual. And even though they have a pretty old city council, but it was really amazing to me how much we could accomplish virtually, including probably one of the biggest developments that community has ever seen. So it works. Next slide. This is just when we were working with this guy, Wade Burkholder. He just said that he really appreciated that we could be focused and surgical, and we were able to reassure the elected officials about proposed changes. And I think Wade liked the fact that even after we left, he could always call and ask for insight. So next slide. And then those are just all of the land use code examples. We're currently working with the town of Common Lake, which is right above the town of Monument. They have a code that was written in 1972, 1973, and there have been very little changes. And again, they don't want to grow, but they're getting a lot of pressure, and so it's a good thing to do. We did do ADUs for the city of Englewood, in Granby, and we were with, I just stepped down from being the contract planner in Granby, so we worked with them for over 20 years. And part of what we did, that we just finished there, that we'll talk about here, is we needed, in addition to sort of critical code updates over a long period of time, like many downtowns, parking was an issue. And so the question was, how can we reduce the parking requirements so we can get development into the downtown? So that's something we'll be talking about with you guys. What's another one? Yeah, Parker was downtown. Greenwood Village was a unified development code. We're not talking about anything like that here, because again, I think we have to be surgical, and I think we have to be quick. And then once the development starts, you know, when you're in a different place, then maybe other things need to be done. But what you really need, and what we'll talk about tonight, is I think the place to start is going to be with your residential zone districts, which are messy. I mean, they don't look messy unless you start reading the definitions.
Yeah.
And then you go to Article 5, or is it your Article, no, what is it? It's
502.
502, yeah.
501.
And even the use table. Okay, next slide. So what we've done with staff, Ken caught me early on, he said, well, there's only 35 on this sheet. Did you get this sheet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, once I did this PowerPoint, then there were at least 37. So there were more, and we can talk about what those more are. But, you know, again, we first set the simple ordinance, which was to change the setbacks. And we had all those comments. And so part of what we want to dialogue with you guys tonight is how you can make one simple change, and then all of a sudden you see that there are other pieces that are not quite right. So do you guys know what a twin home is?
Not a clue.
I asked Julissa if she knew what a twin home was, and she thought it was, that maybe somebody meant townhome. So, but again, you've got a lot of it. One of the things that I always tell communities, and particularly elected and appointed officials, is, and Zach will learn this the hard way, and I think he has, is that the definitions are right there, but often two things happen with the definitions. They're either wrong, or sometimes the definitions include rules. If you have rules in your definitions and then rules in the main part of your code, the potential for conflict is about 90%. And then one of the things that we can talk about is right now, if I wanted to build, say, a duplex in R1, it's allowed, I would also then have to I'd go to the use table, and then I'd go to the use standards. I think with such minimum staff, having applicants come in and having them go through different parts of the code is going to mean that Zach is going to be spending a lot of time helping people interpret what's in the code. And maybe the best example is the woman that was going through and talked about that bought the property next to the Grant residences and didn't know that you couldn't just put. So that's an extreme, but even where you are now, I think if you had everything in one place, it's going to lessen staff time and maybe even make it easier for those of you that are appointed and elected officials. So every time I talk to Zach and Ken, I joke because it's like I always find a new conflict. So we knew that, so everybody wants ADUs. We think that ADUs is a really good sort of early action item to get needed housing in town. What's interesting to me is you already have a lot of ADUs in town. And driving around today, there was even more. So ADUs are great because seniors love them, because sometimes what happens is the senior, and I'm one of them, moves into the smaller home and then rents out the bigger home. But it's a win-win for both parties. It's good for security. I mean, there are thousands of reasons for that. One of the things, but you have this part of your code that talks about accessory living quarters, but that can only be as the temporary dwelling of guests of the occupants of the premises. Now, Mayor, do you want to tell me that my guests are temporary or not? I mean, is that something that you can really enforce?
I mean, that's not an issue that I want to have on the books at all, which is why we're having these conversations right now.
Okay. So the one thing that that you have done is a couple of years ago, I cannot tell you how many court cases there were over the term single family. And so because families are no longer the secular family we all knew, so what happens when unrelated people live together? Well, Zach pointed out, rightly so, that you do have a definition of family, which it can be up to 6 unrelated persons. Now, how that applies to an ADU will be a question as we move forward, because that's a lot of people maybe in a pretty small space. But, another example of where things get a little bit confusing is throughout your code in the R1 and the R2, you talk about 2 family. But then I go to the use table and it doesn't have 2 family, it has duplex. Okay, so all of those inconsistencies over time, one, make it hard to administer, and in some cases could, you're not in a litigious community, but I've done a lot of work in Colorado mountain communities, and the attorneys are always right there. Another one is guest house or guest rooms. Again, the facility, it says occasional housing of guests of the occupants. And you can't use it as rental or permanent occupancy. So either you need to delete it or you need to amend it. But again, there's so many issues in your code. And again, this happens, you're not, I'm not picking on you, because let me tell you, when you have land use regulations that have not been used, and you only have to look at how many building permits are pulled every year, this is what happens. Next slide. So in your current code, you have size of lots and lot coverage. So this was one of the things that Zach, Kent, and I talked about, and it was like, well, let's think about this. So again, you've got a 50% rule for the main building and accessory buildings. You've got a 50% rule for two-family dwellings, but then the lot size goes up considerably. You want to know what the average size of a lot is in Woodland, either in R1 or R2, 7,000 square feet. So why did you change it to 8,400 square feet? And the rule says, well, it has to be 8,400 square feet unless the lot was created before a certain date. Well, that's every single lot in town. So why confuse people? I mean, it's just gonna get, so again, all of these lot sizes, so that was fine. We got our heads around all of that. We thought that was simple. Next slide. So in the current code, it now says accessory structures shall not be required to comply with the interior rear setback standards that applies to principal uses. Then it says that accessory structure shall, however, be set back at least 10 feet from the rear lot lines and shall not be closer to the side lot line than the applicable minimum interior side setback. What does that mean?
I don't know.
West is east and north is south.
But was also interesting, and I gotta tell you, it was really great for Bob and I to drive around town, and the first thing I said, so I'm somebody, that when we've looked at satellite images and maps and all this kind of stuff, but there's nothing like driving around town, as you know. As was Bob, I said, I want to drive down these alleys, because if you drive alleys, it is so amazing what you learn about a community. So I would ask Zach, I said, okay, this is in setback 10 feet. This is in the alley, but it was more of a question about what can and what do you want to enforce. And so we really believe strongly, particularly Mr. Haywood, that if you have something on the books that you're not going to enforce, get rid of it. I mean, just get rid of it.
Yeah, I agree.
So, then so the height for an accessory structure can't exceed 16 feet. Okay? But it'll be on the next one. Do you know how high a garage can be?
20 feet to the deep.
Yep.
As we changed that, yeah.
Yep. Okay, then the other question is, and Zach and I have talked about this because this is one of my pet peeves. So you guys are under the International Building Codes. So the way in which the International Building Code measures height is often very different than how the zoning code measures height. So I'm new to town. I have my architect, of which I know they're not in town, but I brought someone in from Hayes or wherever. So what rule am I using to measure height? Again, that's something that if you put it in the code, that will make Zach's life so much easier because that always comes up. this one, when I went through the code and looked at building coverage, this came up, but then when I went into the code, I couldn't find it, and I said, Bob, where is this? But again, single-family attached dwellings shall be exempt from the building coverage standards of the underlying zone district. That's totally contrary to 5 other places in the code. I mean, I feel so bad for that. Okay, next one. So this one, again, if you make a simple change to setbacks, which is what they thought they were doing, what was fascinating to me is I then looked at the code, and it was like, wait, it says playhouses, patios, cabanas, porches, doesn't say whether they're attached or detached, okay, gazebos, and incidental household storage buildings, but they can't cover more than 5% of the total lot. You're gonna have Zach go out and measure all those little outbuildings to see if it's 5%.
He's gonna.
I'd like to get fun with it.
We're good.
And then you have garages, carports, and off-street parking and loading areas. Okay, so those parking and loading areas, okay, is that a paved driveway or is that a pervious driveway? In other words, I have a rock driveway, so it's not gonna affect drainage. But that's 12%. Okay, the one, because I'm a gardener, that just killed me, and this guys were laughing when I brought it up. Gardens, provided that they meet the required setbacks of the district in which they're located. So Zach's gonna go around and make sure my garden is within the setbacks. That is a waste of everyone's time. As a gardener, if somebody came, I want you to know I live next to the building commissioner in my town, so I pay attention to these things. So again, you should just delete that. Okay, that is, you should not have anyone in town. I mean, you had the couple that came in here before with the issue with the, crops in the neighborhood, et cetera. We get that, okay? But if you start getting after gardeners, you're gonna be in big trouble.
In our defense, we did have one house over on 8th Street, which is the main artery. He used to grow sweet corn clear up to the end of the street.
Okay. And then you could catch them on your sight triangle, right? Because you couldn't see around the corner.
I don't know that it was clear in the side triangle. I remember it being an issue.
Okay. But again, if you're gonna, if you're not gonna grow and Zach doesn't have anything to do, then fine. But if you're gonna grow, you gotta make this simple.
Yeah,
I agree.
So one about new development, keep it simple.
Please.
Yes. The simpler the better. And ensure the rules are consistent. Because what takes anybody that's administering a code a long time is when you find inconsistent rules. Because if I were Zach and I find an inconsistent rule, then I'd go and I'd have to ask Ed, well, Ed, what do you think? What are we going to do about this, etc. So one of the things we're suggesting, and it may mean the code gets a little bit longer, but I think it will be simpler to administer. So you have the R1 zone district, or the R2, what you have right now. And in that zone district, when I open it up, it has principal uses by right. Okay, I'm allowed to build that principal structure. It then has those accessory uses by right. Right now, they're in 19, in the use standards, 19-. Yes. And when I do this for a living, and I've done it for a long time, if I'm confused, okay, and I love codes, then what is the average homeowner, never mind developer, going to think? So we're recommending that instead of having those accessory uses by right and conditional uses listed in a different part of the code, I can pick up the code, and in R1 and R2, I know what those accessory uses are by right and what the conditional uses are. And again, conditional uses need, it's fine to have them, but you then need criteria that's set, because the idea is if you can mitigate the impacts of this conditional use, then it's okay to have it on that lot. I don't think you have strong criteria in your current code. What do you think of that?
Haven't had anybody try for it yet, so.
Okay, yep. Again, the use table is inconsistent with what you have under each zone district, which started making me crazy, and I started going through it, and it was like, no, it's gonna be easier to just list what you want in each zone district. And then if you want a use table, because some people like tables, then create the table once you have everything you want in each zone district. Okay. Lastly, design standards for manufactured homes and all homes in each residential district. You have design standards for manufactured homes that are so ancient, it refers to a double one. One, when you have design standards by state statute, Kansas's are very similar to Colorado's. The design standards you have for manufactured homes or modular homes also have to apply to any residential dwelling in that zone district. So you need to be really careful about how you write them. Usually, and I spent a whole 10 years of my career dealing with this. In Colorado, the Manufactured Home Association sued 7 towns in Colorado because they were not allowing manufactured homes in residential zone districts. And I became very good friends with the head of that organization, which now has a different name. But it's very easy, so one design standard, and I think you have something like this, is, all homes need to have, peak roofs. They have to have a change in plane. So you just don't get a rectangular box. And so what you write for the manufactured homes or the modular homes, you wouldn't mind having that on a single-family dwelling that was stick-built. But the idea is make it the same for everyone. And if there are particular standards that you want in any of the zone districts, list them there. Again, easy to follow. Next slide. So, again, keep it simple. So for your dimensional requirements, you need minimum lot area, minimum lot width. The question is, do you want to have maximum gross density? So the example of that would be, so it's sort of like you can have, X units per acre. The question I asked Ken, hopefully everybody knows. So Ken currently is one of those people that has an ADU in his basement. He also has a really large lot. It's 10,000 square feet. So in your opinion, do you think it would be okay for Ken to have his basement ADU that exists, so it's a non-conforming use of record, and then add another ADU on his lot? What do you think?
Is it a corner, it's a corner lot, so that kind of complicates it a little bit, doesn't it?
Well, you'd have the setbacks,
Okay.
so that's gonna control where it is. But it really has to do with how many units is appropriate. And you could control that by maximum gross density. But again, that's a choice, because I said to Zach and Kent in the car, I said, well, that requires arithmetic. And do you want to have arithmetic? Or do you want to have some absolute number so people don't have to figure out well, if I have a 10,000 square foot lot, that means I can have, you know, whatever. But again, so that's a choice. Setbacks and yard regulations, I just call them setbacks, because that's what they are. Front, rear, your front setback, they've already changed it, is really big. But, and so,
That's a big line of sight, isn't it? On
The building line
The building line.
but we're changing the
Right.
term building line,
or 60 feet from the center of the street.
and we don't want the 60 feet from the center of the street. Because again, that's just hard arithmetic, so can we just come up with a number? I think you guys suggested 20 feet from the property line. Let's use, again, you've got property line and building line. I'd ask these guys, what's the building line? Because it could be different than the property line. So,
right about there.
yeah. The other choice you have, and again, this is a figure that needs to be fiddled with, and both Kent and Zach took a whack at that, is maximum lot coverage. Now, the choice there, and it is a choice, is if it is lot coverage and defined as the building footprint, okay, that means if I have a paved driveway, it doesn't count. If I have a concrete patio, it doesn't count. The issue is, in communities we've worked in, where drainage is an issue, the question is, do you want to go to a lot coverage that's impervious surface? So that would mean you would count.
Driveways.
Right,
Yeah, concrete.
Unless you had, you know, I have a rock driveway because I know we have drainage problems, and so that's rock. So again, that's a choice that as we work through this, would be brought back to you. You know, do you think drainage is enough of an issue, or do those lovely road dips do the trick? Just like when you have a bog over his podium going back towards I-70 and that one dip.
Okay.
And you warned us. Again, we talked about maximum building height. The other thing that's important, controlled by building code in first, is the distance between structures. So if you're going to allow ADUs, do you want a particular distance between the principal structure and the ADU? Or do you want to follow building code? And building code is 5 feet if it's
5 feet for an hour and a half fire resistant rating.
Yeah. So, but again,
Well, and the window wells count as distance between structures because you may not be able to bring a lawnmower down because two window wells are close together in the width of a lawnmower.
Yeah.
the, when I first met Kent, probably in 2016, when I saw him today, I said, oh, your hair is a different color. The town of Milliken, where he was working, had a housing developer that basically, they had very narrow side yards. And they had window wells, because we were in basements. And all of a sudden, it turned out in this whole subdivision that people could not get lawnmowers, commercial lawnmowers, into the backyard. It was even more difficult to get just the regular lawnmower into the backyard. So again, they're just things that you think about, you know. So Zach and Kent, Zach came up with, okay, for one story, the setback has to be X, it's in the paper, you know, and then I said, well, do you want to do it that way? So again, it's an absolute number, or do you want to have a rule that for every foot you go up, you need 3 feet more? Because I like things to be practical. So I want, if I owned a 2-story home, I would want to get to the 2nd story window to claim it without getting the ladder on my neighbor's house. that might, and if I had a fence, that would be more difficult. So again, very practical things to think about, but that's sort of a big picture of where we think we need to go. Next slide. So let's talk about the other zone district that got a lot of attention during the interviews was C2. So I think everybody agreed that C2 should be used to promote more mixed-use development. And I think Colorado, back in the 60s, had a model land use code, and so everything got labeled C1, C2, and I1, C2. But no one knows what that means. So another simple thing that you can do if you're expecting development is you can keep it as C2 and just say downtown mixed use in parens C2, or get rid of C2 altogether. But the more that you have, these are simple things. If the name of the zone district I can understand as someone that's coming in and wanting to develop, that I can get my head around it quickly, you're far better off. Again, very simple correction. The other thing, though, that I would post that I'm going to send you, I'll have Mike send it to you. The colors on this map are not right. Okay? So, and I talked to Lisa, and Bob and I were over that. So there are standard colors when you do a zoning map. Okay? Red is commercial. Shades of yellow is residential. I don't know why the airport is.
It's water.
But again, and I know your engineers take care of it. That should take somebody, we'll send them the memo. It'd be half an hour on the GIS system, and they're using to change those colors. Again, so people that are coming into the community, I mean, this is the first picture, if I were going to develop here, of what's going on. And what's hard is that everything that's not colored, you know what that is? What zone district that is?
I guess it's R1.
That's right, Mayor. But again, not everybody, you have a code and stuff that has worked for those of you that have lived here for a long time. But if you're going to have new people come in and you want to be development friendly and economic development forward, these simple things can make such a difference. I mean, just a huge difference. So the other things to do on the C2, and we just did this in Granby, so we can show you some of the things that they ended up adopting last year, the year before. But let's say I own one of those downtown buildings and I have those old apartments upstairs. And I would really like those old apartments to be used for housing. If those students go to college, or these new things coming in, some of those units are small. The big problem is where am I going to put the park? So I think you all agreed when this came up before, and we had that lovely, not Zoom meeting, but whatever, virtual meeting. That was really bad. I think reducing the number of parking spaces you need per dwelling unit makes sense. And you could go to a number of bedroom model. It also, you don't necessarily, because you've got a pretty walkable downtown, you don't need the parking right there on the lot. So again, we drove the alleys on both sides of downtown just to see how much parking could you actually get behind some of those buildings if things got cleaned up. And is there land that could be used? So one thing that communities do, and I've recommended this, for decades, and then the city forgets to buy the land, is you have what's called an in lieu of fee. So you do the calculation, Bob did the calculation for Granby, okay, so the cost of a parking space, given current land values, is X. So if I'm going to develop, I pay that money to the city, and it goes into a special fund, and that fund is then used to buy land or acquire land that is to be used for parking. I will tell you that we did that in Glenwood Springs decades ago, and they forgot to buy land. And then they were in a world of hurt. The other thing you can do, again, in terms of, for the apartments, but there's also what's called joint use. So if two different uses don't need parking at the same time, then they don't need as much parking. And my favorite example, we work for the city of Glendale, and they have the strip club, Shotgun Willie's, but they also had a Greek Orthodox church. And those two businesses did not share the same hours. So it was very easy to do a joint use agreement, and both uses had less parking. The other thing, we talked to Julissa about this, and it didn't go over well, was consider on-street parking credits. So in some municipalities, if you have a building and you have on-street parking, you could count that on-street parking as part of meeting the parking requirement. Julissa said she already has, I said, well, this happens in every downtown, businesses complaining that, the 5 spaces in front of their building are occupied, and it's from those people that live upstairs, so you might not want to go there, but again, it's something to consider. I asked Kent, I said, the other thing you have in Goodwood and Bobcat and Martin, these streets are so wide. Could you go in the downtown area on the side streets to diagonal parking and gain more spaces? We actually looked at that in Granby as a way for them to get more close-in parking, but not on site. Okay, so the big question is, how much is it going to cost? So it's impossible in this case to even estimate what it's going to cost. And as I joke with Kent and Zach, every time we look at the code, we find another inconsistency. But I think what we've learned, and we sort of tested it out, is the question is how much can staff handle? So it saves time and money if staff draft sections and CMI reviews. The other thing that I will tell you that when we do code, we're doing them now, just the numbering, the legal numbering of these codes just takes a lot of time. And you should not pay, whether we're not-for-profit or a consultant, to do that kind of stuff, okay? Because you might as well get what you need, and then it's pretty, Mary, if you don't have anything to do, we'll ask you to do it.
Sure.
Yeah, right.
Always looking for
I knew you like that. And then so I think the question for all of you is, do you want to tackle all of the critical recommendations, start in one place, and then, yeah. So I guess our suggestion would be that we, like we did with the first contract, we start with a not to exceed amount. Obviously, our billing rates are, because part of what we're trying to do is, one, move to coaching from the sidelines, and two, begin to create sort of how-to things that small towns can use. And the color of the zoning map is example. I mean, you don't have to pay some engineering firm to tell you what colors. We can just send you a memo and your engineer can do that. So the question is really, you know, how do you want to proceed? And Kent, maybe what you can do first is go through, I mean, I love that these guys did this. It's the schedule of how long it's going to take to even make one simple change. Because like most municipalities, you have rules and public hearings. And I'm sorry, planning commission,
Too much.
a public hearing occurs with you guys, not with those guys.
This is one or more recommendations. See if they're ready.
Yeah.
You know, we went over an example ordinance, and you saw Barb's comments, and also Mike's comments, went over with the planning commission pretty extensively. We didn't go over it as much with the city commission as yet. Of an example, we just tried to change the size of the zone, size, minimum size, and then minimum setbacks of the lots within that zone. And then Barb made the suggestion, you know, we just did water lines, well, then you can do it prior to, but you have some decision points within there. And you saw the comments that she. Well, once staff would get to this ping pong, and that was the thing with what was included in your packet as far as the columns with the red, orange, and yellow columns, which ordinances would require, you know.
The recommendations.
Recommendations would preferably be start with Barb's group or start with staff and then have her review, or mainly just staff only. So you go on that, so then you took a couple recommendations from that list. And that's how we created the ordinance for the program. Okay, let's do this as an example. So we went through this and it showed a couple things. But then we get to the point, so after this ping ponging between staff and CMI, then it would get to this schedule. And it gives you an example of how long it would take once the train gets started. I like using that term. So let's say, and one thing we talked with Barb was, well, if the public hearings at the planning commission level, and it was good to kind of go through this exercise too, even with the scheduling part, because we discussed it. I hadn't, he actually recommends an ordinance to the city commission, and the city commission said, oh, wait a minute, you know, we don't like one little item on it. We like the rest of it, but we don't like one little item. What do they do with it? Well, they have to send it back. Because if you make a major enough change, then you have to start over. You know, you have to have a public hearing. So that's why on this very slide, it says, next meeting, city commission. Presented for initial review and discussion, just to give you, okay, this is basically what I said. You guys see any major problems? Before we bring it to the planning commission, we'll let them work. So that's what that April 1st is about. Then April 9th, which is the next meeting, regular meeting of the planning commission, we have some review and discussion regarding that ordinance. And then if we think we're good enough, then you tell staff, well, we want to set a public hearing for the next planning commission. Well, unfortunately, there's a 20-day wait time as far as notice that you need for the public hearing. So you have that kind of fits between that month, between the April 9th planning commission meeting and the May 14th planning commission. Then at the May 14th meeting, you hold the public hearing. And then, if it goes okay, then the planning commission can say, we'd like to recommend this ordinance for approval. And then there's certain criteria within the code that you have to make statements on. If there's 3 of them for text amendments to the city code. And so staff would help create what those kind of statements are. And then you recommend it to the city commission. And then it's ready at the next week if the city commission gets it together. Ready to go.
That's no bumps in the road.
No bumps in the road. No, what if this? What if that? And then it can come to the city commission meeting, the second meeting in May at reappoint. And then if you guys, you can either approve it, reject it, or send it back with instructions to the planning commission. Or with a certain type of vote, you can override it according to our code. You know.
So let me ask you this, Ken. So let's say it goes to the city commission. Can they approve it in the commission?
Yeah, actually, it's a certain vote, yes.
Okay.
What's a certain vote? Just because I'm curious.
That's super majority or something like that. Maybe that looks for you.
3. Oh, it's a 4? 4 or 5?
You need one extra person.
And 4/5.
So, it's a little
And
extra.
if anybody is absent, then you're really in.
So, and as we go through this, we'll get much more, that was our first review.
So I have a question. The ordinance takes effect upon publication of the adopted ordinance. You don't have a 30-day notice?
Nope. Not for code. And they don't have a first and second reading, although sometimes I like the first and second reading, because you can work it on the first reading and then have the real one at the second reading, but we don't know. But that gives you an example that if an ordinance was submitted, it basically takes 45 to 60 days. And then, we had talked with the planning commission if we wanted to have 2 meetings a month for a little while we work through these recommendations. If we have an actual ordinance to present, then we could present the second one at the April 23rd. You just get, once the train gets going, they're kind of all in process, and each one of them takes 45 to 60 days, depending on when the meetings get. So, does that give you an idea of kind of scheduling and those types of things?
Let me ask you guys, get all of you guys. I guess since November, we keep on poking as part of the, Bobby's deal, because he's done so much economic development stuff. It's really the question of timing, and that's why we met with you again, because you don't want to be in a position where you don't have housing, and then all of a sudden, they need Sherman County altogether. But my sense is that school is in it, right? I don't think they're not going anywhere. I don't think the higher people are going anywhere, because that, again, we wanted to get a sense of, if you're asking the question, is this real? I've been in economic development for way too long to know, and part of what I talked to Lisa about is the idea of incentive. Because I know that most times when they talk about institute of economic renewal, it really can take a small communities what they could do to start with, is then given to the Small Business Administration. But the example that I use, and it just happened all the time when I was with the governor's office, economic development. Sometimes these incentives are really not there. And the biggest example is the city of Chicago gave a huge incentive to place it. The coast in Chicago, but once the incentive is on, so it's a real trick in terms of how you do that, because there were so many examples, you know, that I kept probably within governor relationship, that part of the staff, you know, there's also something that we have to provide a bunch of incentives. But if they're gonna move out, then where are you? You know, and for some of these communities, it really hurts because it's a big part of their budget. The ones that were interested, so we're working down to see the Walsenburg, which was really bad in my years, you know, we think of these times. When they decided that there was Bob and I joked that we never thought that we would be in the bag of the mayor's pickup truck and him telling us the difference between what was intended, like, or whatever. But they
You
ended
can
up.
have a male marijuana plant if you want.
Yeah.
Potent marijuana, it's just that all it has to be female. And I help, it helps them.
But they were, I'll give them credit, they were smart about it. So if Woodland New York investors came in, there's a really large piece of property that they wanted to buy. So they were going to do like one facility, not a convention center, but some place where people.
Conference center.
Here. And the city negotiated a deal where I guess they gave them the land, but if it didn't go through, the city would get $1 million. The city ended up getting $1 million. So there are ways to negotiate those deals.
Yeah.
So they didn't get the marijuana, but they got $1 million, and $1 million in Walsenburg was $1 million. So again, as you get into this economic development stuff, no one's asked the incentives yet.
Not formally, no.
Again, it's gamesmanship, okay, you guys have a lot to offer, but I think if you go back to that first housing assessment thing that we did, it's, I was gonna ask you, if you guys wanna start sort of somehow promoting or some sort of new thing, where you're removing these housing barriers, that might be a really good thing to do, to let people know that you're being proactive, you're friendly towards economic development, you know, begin to sort of let people know that, because Bob, you're having experience just in terms of being with friends in the regulatory perspective.
Oh, I've worked in some places where the regulatory time it takes to approve a new manufacturing facility is less than a week. And others where it's more than 3 years. And needless to say, the places where, let's say it's less than a month, we'll average 100 to 200% more investment than when it takes longer than 6 months. And yet there's a remarkable number of communities in the United States where it's more than 6 months. The other thing is, in terms of like incentives that you're going to have, a lot of people talk about the incentives where you give them the land or you agree to give them some money for the building or something like that. Doesn't work out, you're out the money. The lower in Ireland. But you could also say, you'll get a 5% reduction in your property tax for every 25 employees you have. They don't succeed, it doesn't cost you a thing. And so you start making their incentives something that achieves results for you.
Yeah, I like
Now,
that.
I've been thinking all this talking on this, a little bit of a side, but it's amazing what you can do with definitions when you write regulations. I was involved in helping to create the first African Growth and Opportunity Act. And we were told Congress wasn't interested in new trade legislation. So what we did in the definitions was define Africa as part of the Caribbean. and extend the Caribbean Basin Initiative to Africa. It went through Congress in less than 6 months, and everyone was happy with it.
Very nice.
So do we want to go through some, let's talk about how you guys want to proceed. You guys have the benefit of going carefully through the ping pong.
Yeah, the ping pong and the recommendations and how you actually create an ordinance. Yeah. We went through it, and the yellow is, well, we tried to do different columns. There's probably way more, but we wanted to keep it simple as well. Do we need additional data to do it? Do we need direction from the commissions? One or both of them. And then whether it's staff mainly, staff with CMI review, or CMI primary, and then staff gets a little input on the end. And you'll see in the majority of them, as Josh scrolls through it, that there are not very many that CMI is primary. Most of them are yellow or orange. But even with that orange, it's going to take some time to actually create it. Now, some of the recommendations get combined together. I mean, it's not like an ordinance per recommendation, but it's how it actually works. And then whatever questions we came up with. And, you know, that's the other thing as far as putting these together. If we come up with it's not staff creating this out of thin air. If there's a particular issue that we need some direction from you guys, what would work best? It'd be best to come to you, both of you, ahead of time and saying, okay, just have a picket list, you know, a bullet point list. Okay, what are those things?
So don't just stay right there and put me in 30 minutes. So one of the things we have, I mean, it's smaller communities with limited staff, which is like, you know, when it brings up to feel that it's impossible, the rule is impossible to figure out. So you have, for example, in the parking figures, a lot of things that are measured as a number of things. Hey, Zach, how many times a week are you going to go into, you used to have a restaurant, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how many times are you going to go into a restaurant, you know, during the week when you can figure out how many employees you really have? Okay, and the time, on any given year. So, and I know you're not in that business anymore, but
Right.
so again, I think some of this is, you know, so let's just take the parking. You know, we've done enough parking standards where we can just shoot off, you know, we just did this for these towns, here's the range.
You can have a couple examples and just choose that and go, yeah.
Get it to Zach, and Ken, they can look at it, say, okay, you know, one space for 400 for office is much better than one for 250, you know, just because people, you know, the world has changed since COVID. That's the other thing. People just are not in the offices all the time. People look at, you know, it's a whole new world. I think is it Denver? The new mayor of Denver, not only is he wants something funny, you know, every day it's something new. First, it's a new type of thing. So it's like, oh, I'll send this to council, but maybe this is a minor, you guys have to start doing kind of. You know, but now the new thing is they want to get rid of, like, they want to really drastically reduce, you know, their parking place. And if they're contentious among, you know, council, but, that's parking Congress now. And just, and when you look through, you know, like you see the view and again, just to see what different kinds of things. I mean, we could very easily do what we did for Brandon, because your downtown's about the same size, and there's that would be a starting point. You know, we've done so many of these over the years, that, oh, this would be a good example. I use Colorado example, but Tim's been around campus, or, you know, maybe this is what he does or whatever. You know, developing codes now is so different than it was when I first started, because every single code is now around. You know, in the old days, I had an office full of code books, because if you wanted a comparison, that's where you look, but now it's really not easy, and a lot more expensive.
In each of the recommendations, it's going to come to both of you for review and trying to point out to you, okay, this is a change that could have an effect, and let you think through it first and agree with it before just approving it. You know, it's not staff saying, well, this is what we think we should, you know, the community should have. It's what you guys want to have in the end. We're just giving you an example. And through this process, you've also provided quite a bit of input that we think we can get, especially in the yellow and orange columns, to a place where we can actually make the change. And then it's a matter of, okay, do you want to follow through on it? Don't have to. Even as much work has been done, don't have to. But we can follow through.
There's also, I think, you know, one of the things I've learned over many years, it was just like the ADU example council. You know, it gives examples that you can understand, you know, because, and I asked the least the question, I said, okay, I'm not, I don't know, you know, he's got, you know, an ADU, what do you think? You know, sort of the issue of how much, what's the impact, and how do you want to control it? So with an ADU, you can control it by size. You can simply say it needs to be smaller than the principal use, which would be my recommendation, and keep it simple. But, you know, when you go to overtime, you know, it was totally realize the amount of time we spent on how long accessory structures could be was amazing. Because, like you, a lot of people get big garage. And the garages are getting bigger than the primary structure, so that it's not accessible. So how do you do that? And then if you spring, they have the issue when they couldn't fit the garages on the small lot, so the garages are down the street. And it's like, how do you administer that? So again, we're always going to go back to, in this case, how are you going to administer that? Because if you start developing, this needs, we don't want that sitting in his office, you know, every hour, having someone come in and say, you know, what can I do? Now, they will do that. And that's part of the issue that we're running into, is I learned from the, you know, the small engineering firm that works for small communities in Farmer Lake. Again, why does this land planner, you know, engineering firm not read the code, okay, and give us something that we could accept? And I understand more specific because the budgets are so tight right now that they don't want the land planner engineer to look at the code. They want them to develop something, send it to the city, and then the city will tell them what's right and what's wrong. Well, that works in larger communities where you don't have a fast reimbursement rate. So what you do to get around that is any contract staff that you use, the developer sign an agreement that I will pay others outside consultants whoever they are, whether it's the water or because as you go through this, you as the city will be making questions, comments, suggestions on how you might want to proceed? if you want things to come, then there's sort of two different ways to do it. You can have little code suggestions and then just have them keep rolling, or you can lump them together and you know, your sense of how.
I guess my feelings are kind of the most pressing matter, which does take a good part of this, is figuring out what we want to do residential.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the top priority right now, because we need to get that done as soon as possible. If we have all this growth that keeps being talked about come our direction, so they have options to be able to.
So stop right there.
Yep.
So does that mean you start with R1 and R2, clean that up, okay? And again, you have very little property with R2.
Mm-hmm.
And most of R2 has been developed as single family. So we could take collectively R1 and R2, clean that up, probably have the ADU option, because that's going to give you housing sooner rather than later. And clean up anything related to that. The question then is, a lot of you during the interview you all felt that there was a need for multi-family housing. Where's that going to go? Oh, not I mean, is that something that then, in other words, you want to take the low-hanging fruit first, fix that, sort of see where you are, and then, you know, then we talk about that in the meeting. Because I couldn't see you guys, not with the other part. But, do you think that there's a need to tackle the multi-family right away, or do you think we can wait?
I mean, I think that the multifamily is less pressing. I think it's just something that we want to definitely look at and make it as easy to build something of that nature as other residential, single-family, ADUs, whatever. As far as, you know, where those may be built, we need to figure that out. But
Well, but I think we talked in the virtual meeting. I think politically, my recommendation is it's not your job as the policy. You could create your own district for multi-family. Okay, so it would be there, and if I came in, I knew I could grab it. But I think politically, if we could say, if this is what it's going to be. I don't think that's your job.
yeah. I mean, I agree with that. Maybe I worded it poorly, but yeah.
But I mean, is that something? I mean, I agree. I mean, my sense is, can we start with R1 and R2 as the first place, see where we're at. I mean, we could go through the definitions.
Yeah.
Just to get those cleaned up, because, again, it's simple, and then look to get rid of this stuff. Because, you know, I cannot tell you how many communities we go into, and I don't know who comes up with the number. Because the numbers don't make any sense. And it's been difficult to administer. I mean, the 5% rule is, you know, I mean, for the outdoor, it's like just driving around town. I think
They'll blow away.
But again, I think I want it as easy as possible for staff, if someone comes in, to be able to say yes or no. And more importantly, for staff to be able to say, please look at this section. Please read this section first. If you're so confused, then come to talk to me. But I'm really concerned about, I mean, how much time now do you spend answering questions?
probably at least 5 to 6 times a week.
And for how long?
Depends on what they're asking about. Some of it I have memorized off the top of my head.
But give the commissioners an example.
Probably 20 minutes minimum, 25. And that's if you're not dealing with corner lots and all that other good stuff. And then having to explain to them the building lines and where exactly the house could potentially be on the lot.
And what about conflict in terms of what we do or do not do that next year? Why kind of question, and is, like, can some of the multifamily and the single family, can those, like, overlap in terms of footprint and things like that? The multifamily right now is only allowed in the R2 district. And part of the issue is the lot size requirements are such that it's difficult to get more than, give them an example, like 2 or 3.
More than a duplex, really.
But I think my bigger concern with the R2 is there's just not land advantage. Because they all got built out of single family. So you basically have, a pretty, tight community, but it's basically primarily single family. And I think that adding the ADUs in terms of impact, traffic, whatever, is not going to be that big a deal. Particularly because, my question, this is in another community, I think I answered it. So you allow duplexes in an R1. What's the difference between a duplex and a single family and an ADU? What has more impact? The duplex has more impact. But the question then is, can I have, how many ADUs can I have on a lot? Is it just one? The other question, and we talked about this with staff, that has come up with all the ADUs, is should an ADU require off-street parking space? And Kent says absolutely, right?
Yeah, at least one.
Yeah, so one. There are, because Mike has looked into this, Mike said, again, these are denser communities, they feel, that many communities, again, denser communities, if they really are, that they're saying no parking space. But I think that requiring a parking space in Dublin, it should be pretty easy to do. I mean, it's not going to be a big deal. But, and again, for these questions, but all the rest, it's not really a question. And this is a good one, is do I need to live on the property to have an ADU? And I think that's because we have understood in Madison Springs, because it's a huge sort of tourist destination. The issue when I was working with the Housing Advisory Board was, I'll build an ADU and then a boat house. And we don't have the short-term rental issue that a lot of Colorado Mountain communities have, but their issue is really the accessibility, and it's getting under short-term rental. And the short-term rental has a huge impact on safety.
Housing affordability.
What?
On housing affordability.
Yes.
Is the local teachers, firefighters, et cetera, the residents, are getting fewer and fewer, in a sense, places they can live because everybody's doing short-term rental.
But that was the first question that I asked. And so as long as at this point you don't have that issue, I think you're okay. But again, it's just a question, do I need to own the property to do an ADU?
But in that effect, you could still have local property owners, but end up owning half the lot and have an ADU on each one. But then how much of that turnover do you want? You know, if it's required to live on, I think it becomes a different calculation for whoever's doing it.
What would be the best way to get this kind of question, and how do you want to do that?
Well, part of it is the preliminary discussion before you set it for public hearing. You're going through those items. And you're trying to get to the point, okay, on this specific, we have some makeup of an ordinance. And then it's like, okay, here are the 3, 4, 5 questions we want your feedback on before we finalize whatever the ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, I would think as long as, we got those questions at least some period of time before we had the initial discussion, we should all be coming in prepared to answer those when we have the discussion.
You should. But I think all this homework that we've done for the last few months helps you get to the point where you should be able to answer it fairly quickly, or at least know the parameters.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have any questions, but, I guess what I'm feeling is kind of probably along the same lines of what Aaron just said, that, probably our biggest chance to have massive impact is to address one of our key issues. I think about, who's going to do the construction, and I don't see anybody jumping up right now to build a camp. And so I think about the people in town that do that kind of work, and they're probably going aid to building or remodels for people and that sort of thing. So it feels like that's where we could have our impact first and get houses moving. And then, we probably, maybe that will attract someone as a developer or contractor that wants to come in and build a bigger project. But right now, we don't have the manpower to build big projects.
Well, and that's why this housing was partnered for this project, because they're looking at modular. In fact, remind me the difference between modular and manufactured build.
The date it was built, basically.
But I think there's something in terms of review of a manufactured versus a modular. If you remember, we talked about.
Give me a second and I'll tell you.
Because, manufactured housing, I think this is kind of is easier to review because it has to be built to certain standards because it's crossing state law. And that's one of the issues. But this new modular is a little bit different in terms of the review. And we discussed that, I forget it. But again, there's a little bit of difference there. But I think, given the issues you have in building trades right now, a lot of what you're going to be seeing is either manufactured or modular. I mean, particularly on the ADU side. And as long as they're on a ground set foundation, you're okay. I mean, some of these tiny homes, they're already there, and they're already constructed.
So that, to me, that's where it fits in this R1, R2 discussion, and the land design standards. So that that is clear. If somebody wants to bring something in and start manufacturing, there's some pretty clear rules about what that needs to look like. If you're a garden shed,
Right.
be insulated, so, you know, that kind of.
Right. And people live there.
So per definitions, a structure which bears a seal indicating compliance with the federal manufactured home construction and safety standards established pursuant to 42 and that whole statute, and constructed on or after June 15th of 1976.
So that gets into what's called the type 1 and the type 2. So the manufactured homes are type 1 and they're type 2. And it has to do with whether they're manufactured. But it's the modulars that now have a different set of rules.
A manufactured residential structure built to a nationally recognized and accepted construction standard published by the building officials and code administrators, the BOCA, or the International Conference of Building Officials, the ICBO, and the unit is inspected and certified at a factory that it meets said standard, and a modular home shall have exterior structure, materials, and appearance similar to the customary single-family structures as required by manufactured home residential design, and shall be permanently situated on a concrete foundation.
But it may be that with some of these modular homes and manufactured, that the amount of inspection that's going to fall on that is less than different. The trick with all of this is and I started looking into it. In Colorado, so there was, and I think it's still in Kansas, so there's a rule that on these tiny homes, you can't live in them more than 2 years. However, so Colorado changed that rule, so it could be longer than 30 days. Kansas has yet to change that rule, but there's something in your local code where you get to extend on some of these RV things, you get to extend how long they can live in those units when it's here, when you're wherever. So there may be a loophole where that 30-day limit is not an issue.
And you worked around.
Yes. There's a workaround. It's just I don't know if I can, I didn't know the culture statute that was enforced, and I don't know.
And then in our use standards, our famous 19502, there's not even a use standard for a modular home, just for manufactured homes, which is where the 22 feet wide, 40 feet in length comes into play.
No, go ahead. With a 22 by 40, that affects the mobile home park zone, especially, and also how mobile homes fit within the residential district.
Comment, concern, great idea.
Just scrap it all and start fresh.
I mean, sometimes, yeah. I will tell you, I didn't expect it. Typically, what we do is when we get problems in the code, we do a code diagnosis, a reading version of that. But on the code I'm working on now, we sort of did look at the subdivision regulation. And I thought, this is because in order to apply it in the ability to combine lots without going through the whole subdivision benefit, which makes most people happy. So the little things like that. And when we got into it, we got me and said, we were kind of administrator. I said, we've got to start from scratch. It'll be much cheaper to spread it out and start over. And then working with the town engineer, and I said, Mark, when you look at this, I said, I know it comes to my customers. And we don't have this anymore. And so they started, and then I've got the kind of minutes, I said, that way, you can get this to the board. And he goes, we're gonna have to do a lot of changes to the engineering standards. Now, do you have good engineering standards where you rely on any engineering standards, or how do you do that? Do you know?
No,
Do you have a good public works manager?
Not really.
Okay. So that's gonna be something else, you guys, if you start getting into people wanting to subdivide land and developing land and providing infrastructure, that's a whole different deal, because on some of these other codes, the standards are just so old, and they make no sense. And then you've got state and federal regulations that you've gotta take into account. So,
which we may come across based on two different things that Zach and I have had conversations with in the last 2 weeks to a month. So as far as the housing growth partners that you mentioned and different lots, they're already asking about utilities and different types of things. And then also the asphalt manufacturer and regarding the lot that they might want to redo comes into those type of things. So there's different types of questions. I think I'm not hearing objection. If we could work together with CMI to work on the residential zones, the initial part that we talked about, along with the ADUs, and see where that gets us, and then ask you again, okay, here's the next thing. Would that be a good enough way to move forward at least and get going on this first one? And probably it's going to involve maybe 2 or 3 other ordinances, but that's the first piece. Does that make sense? Okay.
Got it.
And then we can, they had it in their contract as far as an amendment onto it. We can either do that or we can do a new contract with CMI regarding what's the limit on this. What would you like to do?
I don't remember what the amendment was on the contract.
The hourly rate.
Which I assume would just be the same rate you would work on if you did a new contract for a certain amount of hours. It would be the same rate, correct? Yeah. So I would say, for now, at least as we get through the residential stuff, I'm okay with just going through the hourly rate. And then we get through those if you want to kind of reevaluate and determine where we are there.
I think that's good because then you can also, I mean, I think as we work with that intent, they're going to become more familiar with sort of the category west you sometimes get into and then you can know even what. And I know where I'm focusing.
Yeah.
Except your code, throw me a couple of crazy ones.
I like to keep people guessing.
That's right. Hopefully not for long. We're trying to get away from the guessing game.
No, I think of all of them, the garden bush and all that.
But there was a reason for it.
Yeah, for growing corn on the side of the street.
Well, then you ought to do the Peruvian rule, is the first 4 rows by the street belong to the public.
Oh, I like it. Yeah. I like it.
So that any passerby could get a meal if you're too close to the street.
Yes, yes, it is. Thanks for coming out. And you too, Paul. Thanks for coming. Anybody else have any?
I'm good. I think we have direction for now. See how we can move forward.
Excited. That's good.
And you have, if you ever have any questions or if you happen to be, I guess the only person that I talked to is Ken and Zach, that I know that doesn't tell you who is that. They must have been fun when they were doing their house.
Oh, yeah.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
I know, but she told me, you know, they kept on reading the code, and he's going to explain that to other people. And so, again, this is just something that you should start letting people know you're doing it, because they're going to be really positive. Maybe Mary will get to the college,
Looking forward to it.
I know where they go, I know this is my area.
Well, thank you for making the trip.
Yes, we appreciate it.
Yep.
Anybody have anything else they wish to discuss this evening? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Redland,
Second.
second by Commissioner Showalter. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.